Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an honour to rise today to debate my private member's bill, the Carbon Budget Accountability Act. Speaker, we are in a climate emergency. All the reports from scientists and experts are very clear. We must immediately and drastically reduce climate pollution to avoid climate catastrophe. Debate on this bill could not have come at a more pivotal moment as world leaders and ministers, including the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks, head to Glasgow to take part in pivotal climate negotiations at COP26. These critical conversations could right the ship and set us on a path to a stable climate. Or they could break down and set us up for a climate catastrophe. And so, Speaker, now, at this moment, it is time for Ontario to lead. As the largest province in Canada, it is time for Ontario to play its historic role in Confederation, to lead on the biggest challenge we face post-pandemic. And climate change is the biggest challenge our generation faces. It threatens our health, economy, food security, homes, infrastructure, and so much more. Heat waves are getting deadlier, droughts are getting longer, wildfires are getting more intense, and floods are becoming more frequent and severe. And Speaker, it's costing us dollars. The tornado that hit Barrie this summer cost $75 million in damages. 3 hours of rain in Toronto in 2018 cost $80 million. In fact, in 2020 alone, climate-fueled extreme weather events caused $2.4 billion worth of damage in Canada alone. And it's costing us in our health, Speaker. 6 First Nations communities were evacuated this summer due to forest fires. Poor air quality threatened the health of people across the province, especially elders, children, and people with respiratory illnesses. And Speaker, my heart goes out to the people who lost loved ones during the extreme heat wave that hit this summer, and those who have lost loved ones in other climate-fueled disasters. For decades, scientists have warned us about the negative consequences of increasing GHG emissions. But some have denied, delayed, and even mocked the science. But Speaker, we can't negotiate with physics. We can't deny the increasing disasters that are literally happening before our very eyes. And Speaker, this is happening at 1.1 degree Celsius temperature increase. I can't imagine what the world will look like, Speaker, at 2 degrees Celsius global temperature increase, or the 4 degrees increase, which is the path we are on. Speaker, I have 2 daughters. My niece had her first child during COVID. I stay up late at night thinking about their lives, knowing that the worst of the climate catastrophe will hit when they're in the prime of their lives. And so, Speaker, we have to do better. We have to do better for our children. We owe it to ourselves, our children, our grandchildren, our nieces and nephews. We owe it to the people of Ontario. We must act now. But the fact is that climate pollution is going up, not down, in Ontario. And I want to be very frank right now. This is the point of the speech where I thought I'd sort of unleash a partisan attack on the policies that are happening to make climate pollution go up. But I decided not to do that today, Speaker, because that's not what Bill 32 is about. Bill 32 is about whether we are actually going to try to follow the science. This bill just simply lays out what Ontario's fair share of reducing climate pollution is, so that we have a chance, just a chance, to keep global temperature increase at 1.5 degrees Celsius. It doesn't tell government how to do it. It's not a prescription for how to do it. And believe me, Speaker, I know there's lots of disagreements on how to do it. But I would hope that we would at least agree that we will try to do it. You know, this morning the Ontario Greens released a climate plan that I'm sure is going to generate a lot of heated debate over the days and months to come. And I look forward to having that debate. But today the debate on Bill 32 is about whether Ontario tries. We owe it to people, Speaker, that we will try. And because Ontarians have never backed down from big challenges, we don't back down from big challenges, Speaker. As a matter of fact, during COVID, we closed our shops, we rolled up our sleeves, and we came together to fight COVID-19. As a matter of fact, in the early days of the pandemic, we worked across party lines in this House to pass bills quickly through unanimous consent to help business and people. So in the spirit of working together, in the spirit of succeeding together in a nonpartisan way, I want to acknowledge that the member from Toronto Danforth was the first member in this legislature to introduce legislation in 2016 to establish a carbon budget for the province of Ontario. It utilized different methodology because it predates the IPCC model that I'm using in this bill. Speaker, I also want to acknowledge that the accountability mechanism in this bill comes from the member from Nipissing. When that member was the Minister of Finance, brought in changes to the Fiscal Sustainability, Transparency and Accountability Act as part of the 2019 budget that outlines the accountability mechanisms in this bill. So, Speaker, we are stronger when we succeed together, and that's why Bill 32 builds on ideas from both the official opposition and from the government. I think, Speaker, we can all agree that it is vital for a government to produce a fiscal budget each and every year because the public deserves to know the numbers. And now it is time for Ontario to present a carbon budget every year because people deserve to know the numbers, the truth about where we stand when it comes to climate pollution and where we need to go. The time of setting targets that are 20, 30 years down the road are over, Speaker. That is why countries like the UK and France and others are bringing forward carbon budget laws. So let's dive in quickly to talk about what this bill does. The IPCC says that to maintain a stable climate, the total amount of climate pollution that can be released now and onward can be no more than 10 times current annual emissions. For Ontario, Speaker, this is 1,630 megatons. If passed, my bill would establish a fair carbon budget for Ontario that limits the total amount of greenhouse gas emissions that Ontario can emit at 1,630 megatons from today onward into the future. And to ensure that Ontario stays on track to meet our climate obligations and to hold this government and future governments accountable, each year the Minister of the Environment must table a report to the House no later than March 31st that outlines Ontario's annual emissions in relation to the legal limits under this applicable carbon budget and the policies that the government will implement in forthcoming budgets. If the government does not issue a report before the Assembly, before the deadline, much like if they don't with the fiscal budget, the Minister and the Premier will face a financial penalty of 10% of their salary. In addition to the overall carbon budget, and to ensure that the province is staying on track, additional carbon budgets will be required to be met in certain years until 2045. And from 2045 onward, Ontario will be required to be net zero emissions. In order to meet our net zero target, annual emissions must decline by around 7.5% give or take, each year, so that starting in 2030, average annual emissions will not exceed approximately 84 megatons, which is half of what they are today. In order to maintain transparency to the public, the Auditor General, I'd love it if it was the Environment Commissioner, but we'll say the Auditor General, will report on the government's progress each year to the Assembly and before each general election. So, Speaker, I hope that support for Bill 32 will send a clear message on the eve of COP26 that the debate about whether we are going to try to meet our climate obligations is over. Because we can't negotiate with physics, we can't wish the climate crisis away, we can't solve it with magic or wishful thinking. We have to reduce pollution now. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's just simply math, Speaker, and science. And so we need a carbon budget to hold the current government and future governments accountable on the road to crushing climate pollution in this province. We owe it to Ontarians to be honest with them about what the roadmap looks like. So let's pass Bill 32 today, and then let's have a real, honest discussion about our differing philosophies about how we actually achieve what science says we have to achieve. And let's send the minister off to COP, telling the world that Ontario is ready to attract international investment in the green jobs, the new careers, and the businesses that will generate the 21st century prosperity for this province. Thank you, Speaker.